What's going on, all you minties? This is the Uncanny Omar, and welcome to part 2 of the comprehensive reading order of X-Men in collected editions. Let's get started. And welcome back, everybody. Before getting started, a huge thank you to our patrons for voting for the X-Men reading order. Every month on our Patreon, I put up a poll as to what the next reading order should be. And for, well, the next couple of months, they voted for X-Men. And also another huge shout out to Johnny Boy and Luis for the name plaque, and Johnny Boy for this wonderful Wolverine bust that he got me from his personal collection. Very, very cool. And let's go ahead and talk about what we're looking at. So, of course, I always like to put the books out here, but I like to sneak in books in case somebody likes to take a little picture and just cheat instead of watching the video. But hey, I get it. You know, I'm just a madman on YouTube that loves X-Men way too much. But what we're going to be talking about here is X-Men all the way from 1989, so the aftermath of the Inferno Saga, all the way to 1995, which is known as the X-Men Age of Apocalypse Saga. That's what we're mainly focusing on, and I'm going to introduce where Adjectiveless X-Men takes place. If you want to see the written documentation of all of this, that is one of the tiers on our Patreon. I think it's the $1 a month tier. And you can see all the written documentation of all the X-Men, or all the reading orders that I do on the channel. And yes, I do several reading orders, so there's a playlist called Comic Book Reading Orders. So, without going any further, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, ring that bell for notifications. But let's go ahead and get started looking at X-Men Volume 1 by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. So here we have X-Men by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, Omnibus Volume 1. This is my first printing, but hey, we just got this reprinted. And I mean we, as in all you minties, we voted for Volume 1 to be reprinted back in 2020, and we finally got it towards the end of 2020, and Volume 2 came out this year. Actually, no, wait, both of them were delayed until 2021, but hey. So, here we are. Now, everybody should be able to get their hands on these volumes as of this video, Volumes 1 and 2. But here we have the first appearance of a major character that will play a big role in the lives of the X-Men, and that is Jubilation Lee, Jubilee. So the first story here in issue 244 introduces her as the ladies that are now living in the Outback, the X-ladies, go to the mall for a ladies' night out. So, hey, that's awesome, right? Everybody needs a break, including the men. So we have the guys' night out. We have Wolverine, Longshot, Colossus, and Havoc. The guys, the X-Men in the Outback, all go out on a night in the town. They go out drinking. This one is drawn by Rob Liefeld, and it's a kind of a silly take on the DC crossover event known as Invasion. As a matter of fact, the aliens look like the aliens in Invasion. And look at this. Thought I'd forget, didn't you? But we have different kinds of aliens, to be fair, including Jabba the Hutt, Boba Fett, aliens. Hey, look, it's like they were foreshadowing Marvel being able to print those books now in omnibus format. But let's continue with this. We have the Atlantis Attacks issues in here, which is part of the crossover of Atlantis Attacks. Now, one of the things I didn't say in the previous Omnis, because I wanted to talk about it mainly here, is that this is my favorite artist of all time. This is Mark Silvestri, and he is... Actually, he draws, I think, more issues than Jim Lee does in this omnibus, even though it's the Jim Lee omnibus, and I get it, because Jim Lee's first fill-in issue was 248, and then eventually he came back during the Acts of Vengeance, and then took over the book as of 268. So this is where you... Hey, that's the second printing, and there's the first printing. So Jim Lee's first published X-Men work is right here, and we have Donald Pierce, once the White King of the Hellfire Club, teaming up with Letty Deathstrike and a whole bunch of Reavers to take down their arch nemesis Wolverine. So, as I was talking about the previous volume with Inferno, this right here is... Think of it like X-Men Disassembled. That's the way I could best describe this particular omnibus. The X-Men made a deal with Roma, where they were... I talked about this in part 1, but where they were believed to be dead by the entire world. But as of Inferno, we started seeing more and more people realizing the X-Men were alive. So during this particular era, the X-Men are starting to lose this battle with not just humanity, but also just all their villains. Their team members are believed to be dead or missing or just leave the team. So in an act of desperation, this is a Rick Leonardi fill-in issue here. In an act of desperation, something happens where, not a lot of readers agreed with, but I completely understand where they're coming from. But some of the X-Men decide to take Roma up on her offer. So Roma gave them this little piece of jewelry called the Siege Perilous, that if ever things get bad enough, the people that use it can walk through it and start over a new life. Meaning they would have forgotten about their previous lives and start over living in a new life. Whether it's a new career, a new alias, sometimes they look different. That's what the Siege Perilous was. So some of the X-Men, actually all the remaining X-Men with the exception of Wolverine, walk through the Siege Perilous. And it's such a freaking epic moment. I'm not going to tell you who walked through it or who was the one that told them to do it, but to me, it was such a pivotal moment in the X-Men's lives. Like, they gave up. That's crazy. So for the issues in between, the remaining issues, we are focusing on the Muir Island X-Men, like Forge and Banshee. And Forge and Banshee refuse to believe that the X-Men are dead. So they have like this buddy cop moment in the following issues here. After Acts of Vengeance, we're introduced to a new Psylocke. This is before the retcon that's happened here, where she is the Mandarin's assassin. So she is known as Lady Mandarin, going after Wolverine, because during this time, Wolverine was about the only X-Men that was full-time. By now, Jim Lee is filling in more issues with Scott Williams joining him on inks. Then we go back to Silvestri, and Will Spertasio has an issue in here too, introducing us to the character of, he does the second appearance of Gambit. So this is the issues right here where Forge and Banshee team up, looking for the X-Men because they think that they're still alive out there somewhere. I love those. I think it's like, that would make a good series right there, where these two buddy cop characters are just out looking for the X-Men because they refuse to believe that they are dead. And as I mentioned, some of the X-Men are starting to reappear again with their new lives. They don't have any memories of their past lives, and that's about to come into play pretty soon. There's a crossover. As a matter of fact, there's two crossovers that I'm going to be talking about soon. And here is Gambit. This is his second appearance. Here he is in his first appearance. I know there's some people that think that the annual number 14 is his first appearance, but I'll always consider this his very first appearance, mainly because this is what came out to me first. Now, it's interesting to note that Gambit's first appearance, at least what most of us think it is drawn by Jim Lee up here. Because he is created by Jim Lee. He was designed by Jim Lee, but Andy Kubert supplies the covers. The insides are done by Mike Collins, so not even Jim Lee. Will Spertasio does 267. This issue right here, where he meets a young Storm. Why is she young? Well, you can find out for yourself. But yes, this wonderful issue right here, 268, which I go on and on about, so I'm not going to talk much about it. But then we get the bubbles. And you all know what I mean by bubbles in 269. The bubbles. That's what's up. Oh my gosh, we get a Savage Land Rogue coming up. So Rogue, who's been missing from the X-Men for a while, has a fight with Carol Danvers because they had this thing going in annual number 10 where Rogue took her powers and now Carol wants revenge. And somebody surprisingly comes and saves her, which I may have to spoil when I talk about the second omnibus, but this all ends with the classic X-Men. This was already previously collected in the classic X-Men omnibus. Let's keep going. Remember when I said that there were two crossover events that were not collected in those omnis? Believe it or not, one of them can be found here. This is the Days of Future Past oversized hardcover. If you want these in oversized format, there are trade paperbacks available. But what this collects is the Days of Future Present crossover event, which kicks off in Fantastic Four, annual number 23, and then continues into New Mutants, annual number 6, and then that continues into X Factor, annual number 5, I think is what it is. Annual number 5. And then with what some people think, Gambit's first appearance, annual number 14. This one here. So, drawn by the phenomenal Arthur Adams. Man, I don't think I've seen a better burger eaten scene than this one here. Yes. Love that. All right. So this is the crossover event, Days of Future Present, which serves as the follow-up to Days of Future Past. Anybody seen RoboCop? Anyway, we have Ahab here, and then there's clues as to who Ahab may be. You can find out for yourself where some of those clues led. And then we have some of the other stuff that's been collected through Excalibur back here, the Days of Future Past Wolverine miniseries. But the most important thing for the reading order is the Days of Future Present. Then you come to this, Extinction Agenda, also released in trade paperback format, the milestone format. So this is something that started all the way back in 235 when we're introduced to the country of Genosha. That was back in the previous Omnibus as well. This came out before that Omnibus, though. So this kicks off with issue 270 of Uncanny X-Men. So here we have a lot of these characters reunited with the New Mutants, with the X-Men, and X-Factor. And it's the return of a villain who was once a friend in the pages of X-Factor, and he made a deal with a certain demon to come back, and it has taken over the country of Genosha. And he's pitted all these mutants against each other. There are some phenomenal freaking moments in here. Not just brother versus brother, but when Wolverine joins the fight, oh my gosh, part 7 of this is so badass. Damn, I could do a whole episode on this. We have Rob Liefeld supplying the artwork for issues 95 and 96 of the New Mutants. But when these two characters are made to fight here, and then Wolverine gets really hurt, he starts losing his mutant power, and then him and Jean have a moment. Jubilee and Boom Boom, two of the smartasses from the two different teams, are finally confronting each other. There's a lot of awesome moments in here, and, you know, a lot of changes, mainly for the New Mutants. This is the first time that a lot of these characters are introduced to the character of Cable, right outside of the Days of Future Present crossover event. But that's where you will go next. The second Chris Claremont and Jim Lee omnibus. So this one, again, has been reprinted, much like Volume 1. Now, Days of Future Past oversized hardcover and Extinction Agenda still have not been reprinted. Kicks off with the storyline in X-Factor. This one here has probably one of my top 10 favorite Chris Claremont stories. One of my favorite Cyclops moments of all times. And that's through the pages of X-Factor. So we have Zaladane fighting Magneto in the Savage Land. She's taking over his mutates. And then we have the X-Men in the aftermath of the Extinction Agenda. So in issue 273, the X-Men are now reunited with X-Factor, with the remaining members of New Mutants. I love this issue. This one's drawn by a lot of different artists that have drawn X-Men throughout the years. But at the very end, a character from the New Mutants shows up, Lila Cheney, who is a teleporter. But she's like an intergalactic teleporter. She can go anywhere in space. So she's telling them that, hey, Professor Xavier needs help. Now remember, in issue 200, when Professor Xavier left Magneto in charge, a lot of the X-Men thought he was dead. Like, he was gone. So they were like, what are you talking about? So that she takes them to space, and sure enough, they are reunited with their original headmaster. Meanwhile, here on Earth, we have X-Factor fighting Apocalypse and his Dark Riders for the last time. Yeah, right. Then we get a hint as to who Cable might really be. But all of this, everything comes to an end. We have the Muir Island saga, where the Shadow King makes a return, taking over a lot of the mutants and pitting them against each other. They really love those kind of Coliseum fights. And Professor Xavier comes back, and this is where Fabian Nicieza writes some of this early X-Men stuff. Chris Claremont and Fabian Nicieza. And this is issue 279, and the battle for Muir Island crosses into X-Factor 69. Now, by now, something that you'll notice is that Chris Claremont is being helped on the plot not only by Jim Lee, but also Whilce Portacio is helping him on the plot. Actually, Jim Lee, as of issue 274, is co-plotting Uncanny X-Men, which is freaking awesome. Look, see? Plot Jim Lee with super sexy time Magneto. Remember, he was de-aged because of Mutant Alpha and Moira McTaggart doing things with his head. So he looks a lot younger than what he's really supposed to look like. So back to where we were. The Shadow King comes to an end. And all of it kind of wraps up in the issue 70 of X Factor. This one right here. Which ends with the famous line, "What am I going to do with 14 X-Men?" And that is the beginning of a brand new era in the world of our merry mutants with X-Men #1. The #1 best-selling comic book of all time. All time. 4 different covers. 5 if you include the deluxe edition. This one here. Who didn't have this one when it came out? So when I say Adjectiveless X-Men, this is what I mean. So it wasn't that Uncanny X-Men started over with a #1. As a matter of fact, issue #1 of X-Men came out the same month that issue of Uncanny X-Men 281 came out. And we'll talk about issue 281 later on, because it's not collected here. This is what a lot of people like to call Jim Lee's X-Men, because Chris Claremont, after 17 years of writing this wonderful story of all these mutants, is about to take a bow and leave. Now, Magneto, of course, comes back, and he's all messed up. He wants revenge against Moira McTaggart. So Moira plays a bigger role in here because she manipulated a lot of the things in his head. Oh my god, the Things to Come poster. If only. These are the Villains Gallery. Blast from the Past. Love that they kept all this stuff in here. Wish You Were Here. Yeah, me too. Things to Come. Now, some of these things did come. And then the posters in the back. There are foldouts. I've done an overview of this just recently of the reprint. But in issue 3, everything is wrapped up. Magneto is, well, let's just say he's left unused for a little while. But here it is. The last hurrah. X-Men #3, Chris Claremont's last issue. For now. Don't worry. He'll be back. We all come back. It's X-Men. Then we're introduced to the character of Omega Red, which had ties to Wolverine. Sabretooth makes an appearance, and he's all modernized. He looks different. I think that particular picture right there of Sabretooth has been copied so many times. At least 3 that I can think of off the top of my head by different artists. And then we have the fight with Omega Red. We have Bishop. Who's the character of Bishop? Well, in this omnibus, you're not introduced to Bishop. He's already appeared in the pages of X-Men Bishop's Crossing. But I think this reads better if you just keep going through it. I mean, to stop as issue #3, go to read Bishop's Crossing, I really didn't suggest doing that. I think it all makes sense. You just understand that, hey, there's this character named Bishop. And he's from the future. We'll get to find out more about him soon. And then Jim Lee decides to leave the book as of issue 11. And that ends his whole run on X-Men. That was it. That's all for Jim Lee. Ends with the Mojo story, with the return of Longshot, Mojo, and Dazzler. Remember when I said you'd get to find out more about Bishop? Well, look no further than Bishop's Crossing. Now, some of this stuff is available in trade paperback format, and I know that this oversized hardcover is out of print as of this video, but who knows what the future might hold. Now, this is the issues of Uncanny that are collected here, and that's what this reading order was all based on, the issues of Uncanny. We have the return of the Reavers, the White Queen and her Hellions. We are introduced to new characters like Fitzroy from the future, as well as this character named Bishop, who also comes from the future. And he's here to capture this character named Fitzroy, because he is wanted in the future. So Bishop comes in with his 2 dudes, and together they're trying to capture the mutant fugitive known as Fitzroy. Now here we're introduced to the Gold Team. So in the omnibus, there is a scene in issue #4 where Professor Xavier said, we need to split up the teams. Let's make a gold and blue team. So that's where the idea originated from. So here in issue 281, there's already the idea of the Gold Team of Colossus, Storm, Iceman, Archangel, and Jean Grey, who's going as Jean Grey now, no longer Marvel Girl. And then the blue team is Cyclops, Wolverine, Jubilee, Psylocke, Gambit, and Rogue. But, sometimes they cross over into each other's issues. But all of this is co-plotted by Whilce Portacio. John Byrne does some of the dialogue, and then Scott Lobdell steps in to write the dialogue once Whilce Portacio ends up leaving the book. You have John Romita Jr. filling in a couple of issues. Whilce Portacio again. Jay Lee. Oh, Archangel. Gosh, I love the way he draws him. That's one of my favorite covers. Love that cover. It means so much. Storm and Forge for life. but this is where you come next. This is the next big event. Now, the X-Men Omnibus went all the way to 11A. So the B stories are collected in here, as well as issues 12 and 13 of Adjectiveless X-Men. Here's the B stories with Maverick, a new character introduced through those pages, and then issues 12 and 13. These are drawn by Art T-Bird, who couldn't keep a monthly schedule, but had a Jim Lee look to his art. But like I said, could not keep a monthly schedule, so they had to hire somebody else. Now, the events in here lead directly into the X-Cutioner song, or what was once supposed to be called Sins of the Father. So when Jim Lee was still at Marvel, and so was Will Spertasio, they both had the idea of, let's go ahead and tell the origin of Cable. He was a character that appeared in the pages of New Mutants, but he has a lot of dealings with the characters on the X-Men and their past. So they left, and they kind of left just like a couple of notes. So this is really Fabian Niciesa's crossover. Fabian Niciesa took the notes and just started writing a bunch of ideas for this crossover. It all kicks off with Professor Xavier getting shot, and the X-Men they're forced to team up with Mr. Sinister against this newer villain that they've never fought before, and his name is Strife. So this is a big crossover event. It was 16 issues. The Strife strike files are back here. There were some funny scenes here in X Factor. This is all drawn by Jay Lee. I've always talked about the picture that took me a long time to get of the flower Wolverine. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so when I was in high school, as this was coming out, I thought this was a flower. And I'm like, well, that's a very artsy thing. It took me a long time to realize that was Wolverine, right? Like, that. Damn, I was a stupid kid. But anyway, that stupid kid grew up to be a stupid dude. Just kidding. Grew up to be an X-Men fan for life. But here we have the final chapter of Strife versus Cable. So I let him go again. Damn, gets me every time. And this introduces the Legacy Virus. The Legacy Virus plays a big, long part of the X-Men's lives for the next years. And I'm sure you've heard of the Legacy Virus. It's a virus that just affects mutants and kills them. And some mutants have died of it. Some of them have come back because, well, we'll wait to talk about that in a much later read-through. Let's keep going. At this moment, I just want to remind you all to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day, and I love doing reading orders. And I have no idea how long this video is going to be, so I apologize. It's X-Men. This is something I knew was going to take me a long time. So a little background behind this particular oversized hardcover. Maybe when it gets reprinted, it'll be an omnibus, but this is Shattershot. Now, for a lot of us that have been collecting X-Men in oversized hardcover format and omnibus format, there were some missing issues. Some very, to me at least, important missing issues. And this is the one right here. I was like, wait, we don't have annual number 1 collected in oversized hardcover format. Surely they have enough material between that and a bunch of the other stories that are collected in here to make an oversized hardcover. And they do. So what they did was this kind of forgotten story arc that takes place before issues 10 and 11 of Adjectiveless X-Men is Shattershot. So it's a 4-part crossover through the annuals of X Factor and New Mutants and X-Force and Uncanny X-Men, where the character of Mojo comes back along with other characters from Mojoverse. And this is Joe Quesada's first work with X Factor, before he took over the book, and Greg Capullo's first work with X before he took over the book. Nice. So it's a crossover event. Like I said, it introduces us to Mojo 2, the sequel. But then this is where they also put issues of X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men, the 1991 series, 17 through 24, that was previously collected in just trade paperback format. And as oversized hardcover lovers, this is the format that speaks to us. So Brandon Peterson, Andy Kubert are now the ongoing artists on these books. We have a couple of annuals collected in here. And now you start seeing, even though these issues back here, the Shattershot issues, took place before issues 10 and 11 of the Adjectiveless X-Men, long before the X-Cutioner song, the issues back here are afterwards, because you start seeing the legacy virus start to affect some of these characters. And one of the things that happens here, it's very important, is remember when I said the character of Psylocke had changed after going through the Siege Perilous? She became an Asian assassin. Well, that was all retcon through the pages here. They introduced the character of Quanon. So what Fabian did, and I never liked this, but hey, it's canon now, was he stated that no, she was not altered, her body was not altered, her skin tone was not changed, her eyes did not come from Spiral, but in fact they had switched her mind with another girl, an actual Asian girl named Quanon. And Betsy Braddock comes back in her original body, or Quanon comes back in Betsy Braddock's original body, and it's dying of the legacy virus. So, yeah, soap opera, comics, you gotta love it. When I was doing part 1 of the reading order, somebody wished me luck doing this particular reading order because there's so many crossovers. But honestly, to me, it's X-Men. So it was all great. I don't care. I mean, this is the stuff I grew up with. So this is Fatal Attractions. Granted, this is a lot more than Fatal Attractions. So remember when I said Magneto was up in space and he's left, untouched for a while? Well, this is the big return. It's a 6-part crossover with X-Factor, Uncanny X-Men, Excalibur plays a role, and X-Force. But it's a 6-part crossover that shows the return of Magneto, and he is ruthless now. And the other things that are collected in here are also more issues of Uncanny X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men. We have annuals collected in here, like this annual number 17, drawn by Jason Pearson, which introduces us to the X-Cutioner, as well as Bishop's sister named Shard. This character right here. And this is the return of a villain who has been exposed to the legacy virus, and the legacy virus takes another character from the X-Men. Now, I'm going to start keeping tabs on these books right here, and this is the new X-Men line called X-Men Unlimited. It was a quarterly series, so it came out every 3 months, and it kicked off with the very first issue here. This is drawn by Chris Bacalo, and we're introduced to another character here named Sienna Blaze, who is part of this game ran by the Game Master, and it's a group of characters known as the Upstars. Remember when I talked about Fitzroy earlier? He's one of the Upstars. Sebastian Shaw, his son, Shinobi Shaw, he's one of the Upstars. But anyway, that's what this is, and the Upstars are playing a game of trying to kill a bunch of mutants. But this quarterly series is introduced through these pages here. It hasn't been collected in trade paperback format, but I feel like it's important to start talking about it because it really serves as a third X-Men series. It's like I said, it just came out every 3 months, so there's only 4 issues a year, and most of it has been collected between omnibus format, oversized hardcover format, and in trade paperback format. And speaking of trade paperback format, that's something you're not seeing a lot of in this part 2 of the reading order, because most of the stuff, surprisingly, has been collected in oversized hardcover format. And to have it all like that one day on the shelf, man. But the big thing that happens in here is Magneto comes back. Now, there's a betrayal from one of the X-Men. One of the oldest members decides to leave the team because something happened recently where one of the characters died. And they were really close. One of the saddest moments happens in issue 303 here. And then 304 is the crossover with Fatal Attractions, and one of the characters decides to leave with Magneto. And the X-Men are like, that's no good. Man, that sucks. So we have the return of Magneto, and then we have the classic issue 25 of Adjectiveless X-Men. Remember when I said Magneto is back, and he's more ruthless than ever? Well, this is it. This is the big event right here that shows us how bad Magneto can be. Now, it's very important I talk about this, so I have to talk just about a little spoiler. So if you don't want to hear about it, you can go on to the Cyclops and Phoenix. But in this attempt to take down Magneto, Professor Xavier takes a small team with him to Asteroid M, where Magneto is living. And it's just too much. Like, even Rogue tries to calm Magneto down, and she can't. So Magneto just decides, after getting cut by Wolverine, to rip Wolverine's adamantium out of him. Now, that's not the big spoiler, because I know a lot of people know what happens. This is why you see Wolverine later on leave the team, and with Bone Claws. So I had to mention that. But the other important thing that I have to mention is Professor Xavier just has had enough. There's no way to talk Magneto into being a good guy. Ha! If he only read House and Powers. Anyway, so he says no more and wipes Magneto's mind clean. But something else happens. Something I'm going to be talking about in part 3. Because it's not all what it seems. And then we have this beautiful issue of Wolverine 75, where Wolverine leaves the X-Men, writes this beautiful letter to Jubilee that makes me cry. Larry Hama, Adam Kubert's first issue on Wolverine. Damn, every time. This, so beautifully done. And all of this leads into a wedding, of course. I mean, you got a bunch of bad crap happening. It can't all be bad all the time. But before the wedding, we have the Blood Ties crossover. Now, the Blood Ties crossover is a crossover where Exodus, one of Magneto's acolytes, comes in and is like, hey, I am looking for the granddaughter of Magneto. And that is Quicksilver and Crystal's daughter. So, Luna. That's who he's looking for, and the X-Men get involved. There's also the state of Genosha. Now, what's missing from this particular omnibus, but is collected in the Marvel Premiere Blood Ties hardcover, and because the Uncanny Omar strongly suggested adding to this, is the Black Knight Exodus one-shot. Written by Ben Raab, and I understand it, I get it. It's not the greatest story, but the artwork by a young Jim Chung, when he was going by Jimmy Chung, and one of my favorite Avengers, the Black Knight, and talking about how he first met Exodus and why they know each other during the Blood Ties event, that's collected in oversized format in the Avengers The Gathering. Anyway, I suggested adding that on there. What Marvel decides to do in the end, it's up to them. But this all kicks off with Blood Ties. Then there is, the proposal, like, will you marry me, Jean? And then Jean says, well, I'll let you find out how all that goes. Meanwhile, we have Sabretooth. So Professor Xavier decides to take Sabretooth into the mansion. And everybody's like, dude, he eats babies. We can't take Sabretooth in. And Professor X is like, you all trusted me when I told Logan he could live here. And look how he turned out. So everybody's like, oh, well, damn, it's his house. So, we can't kick him out. So Sabretooth, in a way, joins the X-Men. And meanwhile, Professor Xavier has a tie with Amelia Vaught. These ties are long before the Acolytes, before she joined the Acolytes. Archangel is now, starting to crush on Betsy. There was a beautiful moment in part 2 that I always talk about in Omnibus number 2 between Betsy and Cyclops. But this time I decided to leave it out because I'm talking way too much about these. Shadowcat makes an appearance here with the return of Caliban in the Morlock Tunnel, wanting revenge for the death of the mutants that died in the Mutant Massacre. But this isn't all bad, because it all leads to this wonderful day. The wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix. Oh, man. Now Jean Grey is going as Phoenix, because, she's got to change her name, right? And this one is written beautifully. And Fabian I've told him when I've interviewed him, when I met him at conventions, that I borrowed some of the wedding vows here for my own wedding vows, because it's just beautifully written. And we even get a special, this moment right here where Jean says she wants to dance with Professor X, and he's like, you can't, people are here. There are normal people here. There are muggles here. I don't want anybody to know I'm a mutant. And she's like, I don't give a crap. I'm dancing with the man who's my second father. Oh, what a damn good scene. And then on top of that, we get a small little cameo by Wolverine, but you can see how that all works out. But that's the main thing that happens in this volume, which leads to another crossover event. This one's pretty interesting because this is the Phalanx Covenant. And I say pretty interesting like I say about every single one of these damn books, but stay with me. This one kicks off because it was an idea to use for the cartoon, the X-Men animated series. So I think a lot of you all have told me you've got into X-Men because of the animated series. And because of Jim Lee's designs, which happened in X-Men Omnibus Volume 2, because of Adjectiveless X-Men. But This idea originated for the cartoon, and then they decided, you know what, that's actually a really good idea. What if Jubilee came home and everybody was alien creature? So instead they took it to this particular storyline, the Phalanx Covenant. So it's really about, and then Joe Madureira, this 18 years old, drawing Uncanny X-Men. Holy crap, what talent. That guy. So, where the hell was I? So it's the return of the Phalanx. And the Phalanx are these techno-organic beings, much like Warlock was, and his dad Magus. But here we have them, and they're kidnapping and taking over characters in the X-Mansion. And the only ones that are still alive real mutants are Sean, Cassidy, Banshee, Jubilee, Emma Frost, and that's it. Everybody else is a damn alien. Saints preserve us. Still got that line memorized. And the reason that Emma Frost is here is because something happened during the attack of the Sentinels, Fitzroy Sentinels. But you can find out for yourself. We're introduced to a brand new generation of X-Men characters. A lot of storylines are wrapped up in here, such as the character of Sarah Gray, the missing sister of Jean Grey. Whatever the hell happened to those two kids, her kids? And yeah, we're introduced to this next generation of X-Men, who will be known as Generation X. So this is where Jubilee, after this event, leaves the X-Men and joins Generation X, as much as she hated that idea. Taking us to Legion Quest oversized hardcover. Some of this, again, collected in trade paperback format. Now, this is the volume that I thought, okay, they are on a mission to collect every X-Men title in oversized hardcover format, whether it's an omnibus or oversized hardcover. Because when we get to the next volume, which is The Age of Apocalypse, you'll see some double dipping, as if, oh, I wish they had thought ahead of time and thought, okay, let's put the prelude in this, the Legion Quest prelude, in this particular volume, and then make everything Age of Apocalypse in the next volume. So here we have the setup, and it's a 5-part, really just 5 issues, of something called Legion Quest. So it's the return of Professor Xavier's son, David Haller, Legion, and he wakes up from a coma. And he has this idea, and all of this, by the way, has nothing to do with Legion Quest. It's just the setup for the show. This is orphaned issues now collected in oversized format, which is wonderful for us. By now, John Romita Jr. is back drawing X-Men. But as I was saying, David Haller wakes up and has this idea. Oh, damn, the Extreme, Adam X, the third Summers brother. That's right, I said it. Andy Kubert's still drawing Adjectiveless X-Men. But yes, David Haller wakes up and has the idea, you know what? I'm going to go back to the past. I got it. I know how I can fix my dad's problems. I'm going to go back to the past. I'm going to kill Magneto and rewrite history. So that's where the idea of Legion Quest came in. Adam X visiting the Summers grandfather. So Legion goes back to the past. However, there's a small flaw to his plan because it's Legion and he messes up. So his plan is to kill Magneto. But I have to talk about this, so just a little bit of a spoiler because I have to talk about the setup for Age of Apocalypse. Instead of killing Magneto, he accidentally kills his old man. He kills Professor Xavier in the past. And this is when some of the mutants had traveled back to the past, like Bishop. So Bishop kind of becomes this time oddity because he's from the future and he's a character that's trapped in the past, so he remembers everything. But well, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But yeah, this kicks off the Age of Apocalypse. We have the M'Kron crystal from the Shi'ar Empire involved, but you can find all that stuff out for yourself, which takes us to one of the greatest, I think, to this day, events from the X-Men's history, and that is the Age of Apocalypse. So and by the way, this also collects Legion Quest. Roger Cruz doing his best to mimic Jim Lee at first, and then he's like, wait, this Joe Madureira kid, he's faster. His style is faster. I'll just mimic his art style. See, there's Joe Mad, there's Roger Cruz. Then by the time we get to X-Men Alpha, there's Joe Mad. But Roger Cruz, like I was saying, has a Joe Mad style to his art. So, yeah, we're in a brand new world. The world has been recreated, where Magneto is now in charge of the X-Men, trying to live up to Charles Xavier's dream. So he's band together a bunch of X-Men, some new characters you've never seen, some characters that are dead in the 616 universe, some characters that were members of other teams, and then you have villains that are not villains anymore, but good guys, and then good guys that are villains now. So all the titles, this is so cool. What a cool concept. I wish they didn't tell us ahead of time. It was only for 4 months. But all the titles, Uncanny, X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, Excalibur, all those titles, Cable, were canceled, or, I'm sorry, put on a pause, and then renamed for 4 months. So Generation X became Generation Next, Uncanny X-Men became the Astonishing X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men became Amazing X-Men, X-Factor became Factor X. And what the really cool part about that was the original idea was to take Stan Lee's name. He wanted to call them the Mutants. So that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to... Wolverine became Weapon X. They wanted to call it the Astonishing Mutants and the Amazing Mutants. But then they decided to backtrack and say, no, you know what? We'll just keep it X-Men because it's going to confuse people even more. Now Apocalypse is ruling this land where... mutants are reigning supreme, but Magneto thinks, hey, we should share this, with all the human friends we're going to make, because humans are still good. So that's what this main event is. And we're introduced to the character of Nate Gray, X-Man, who plays a bigger role later on. But the main thing here is Magneto is with Rogue. He has a son with Rogue, and he's leading the X-Men. And... Gambit in the Externals, this is what X-Force became. Sadly, this is also where Fabian Nicieza decides to leave the book. But all the creators stayed on the book during this, like Larry Hama was writing Weapon X. I think at this point, Scott Lobdell was writing, or Warren Ellis, damn, I forgot Warren Ellis was writing this, was writing Excalibur. Remember when I said that Bishop was kind of lost in time? He was a time traveler that got trapped in the past, so he kind of becomes a conundrum. So that makes him the only person to remember what the original timeline was supposed to be like. So he approaches Magneto and his X-Men and says, hey, this is not the way the world is supposed to be. Apocalypse is not supposed to be in charge. And that's kind of the big setup for the Age of Apocalypse. And that's how they might be able to restore the world as it once was. I've always loved the design of Sunfire, how he looked in the Age of Apocalypse. A lot of the designs for the characters in the Age of Apocalypse are awesome. Sabretooth teaming up with Wildchild, very cool. As a matter of fact, this plays a bigger part later on in the 616 universe with X-Factor. Whenever I do... Did I have a X-Factor reading order? I don't know if I have or not. But anyway, where was I? Now, there is a companion of this omnibus. And I'm going to talk... Here, let's talk about the companion. Because you can find out for yourself how the world is restored through the pages of X-Men Omega and then X-Men Prime. So here's X-Men Chronicles. And I feel like these two stories... There's a couple stories in here that were, to me, really important. Like the X-Universe and this X-Men Chronicles. These right here were important because they take place in the past of the Age of Apocalypse. So, I mean, you didn't have to read them, but I feel like they help flesh out a lot of these characters. Why Wolverine left the X-Men, why he's going all rogue by himself. And then the rest of this is other tie-ins. There were other specials that were written years later. There's also the return to the Age of Apocalypse with a lot of the original creators coming back. You have the Blink miniseries, which sets up the Exiles series. Which, holy crap, looking at this, I wish there was an Exiles Omnibus. I mean, who doesn't want that? Here's the X-Universe. This is what's happening to the human side of the characters in the Marvel Universe. Yeah, right here, drawn by the phenomenal Carlos Pacheco. You have Gwen Stacy leading a group of humans against Apocalypse. And other characters pop up in there. But let's look at this mini-series. So what's also collected back here is the 10th anniversary Age of Apocalypse. This is written by Akira Yoshida. C.B. Sobolski, and drawn by Chris Bacalo. Now, there was a one-shot that was drawn by a couple of artists and a lot of writers that originally worked on the Age of Apocalypse, came back and wrote some. But it feels weird that it was 10 years after Age of Apocalypse, and this was written, geez, I mean, we're on a 20-something year anniversary of the Age of Apocalypse now. 25? No. What? No. Is it? 26. Holy crap, I'm old. Anyway, yeah, for aging. But that's it. That's it for part 2. And that, as they say, is that. Now, some of these books are still available from our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online source for collected editions up to 50% off retail price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on excellent packaging, so your stuff gets to you in excellent condition, and they have amazing customer service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And for all you Minties that are watching, if you're a first-time customer, don't forget to mention that Near Mint Condition sent you their way for a promotional credit on free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. CheapGraphicNovels.com, your source for the hottest books with deep discounts, customer service, and excellent shipping that will keep you coming back for more. And that was part 2 of the comprehensive reading order of X-Men in collected editions. Let me know in those comments down below if you have any more questions, or if I left anything out. By all means, please leave it all down below. Again, I will be making a separate video for where to start reading books like Excalibur, X-Factor, New Mutants, books like that. Look out for that video and for part 3 of the comprehensive reading order of X-Men sometime this month. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Please don't forget to check out our Patreon and our spread shop. Great ways to support the channel, and on Patreon, you can have your voice heard and vote for these reading orders. More importantly, all of you, stay healthy, stay safe, and make mine X-Men.